Hi, boys and girls. Have you missed the book Among the Hidden? Have you been thinking about Luke? Do you remember what happened last time we were together before spring break? Let me refresh your memory. If you remember, Luke finally got brave enough to venture outside of his house and try to go across to the house of the sports family, because remember, he kept seeing somebody in the window after everybody had left. If you remember, Luke always counts every morning when everybody leaves, and he counts everybody was gone, but then he kept seeing somebody peeking out the window. So Luke got brave enough to venture outside of his house when his family had left for the day. Remember, his mom got a job, and he went and he got to the door. And if you remember, let me read the last paragraph. Said before he had time to think again, he pushed himself off into a sprint, recklessly streaking across the grass. He didn't even stop to hide at any trees. He ran into the sports family's door, tugged on the screen, and it was locked. So that's how we left off before spring break. So let's read chapter 14 and see what happened. In all his plottings, Luke had never thought of the screen door being locked. Though he knew his own parents locked up at night when they didn't forget, the doors of his house had always been open for him, and he'd never been near anyone else's door. Remember, Luke was the third child, so Luke was not allowed to ever leave the house. So this is his very first time venturing outside his house and outside his yard. Idiot, he muttered to himself. He tugged harder on the door, but he couldn't concentrate enough to make his hands work together, probably because he was so nervous. Each second that passed made the hair on his back of his neck stand up more. He'd never been so exposed in all of his life. Hurry, 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 get out of sight, he kept saying to himself. The door didn't budge. He'd have to turn around now. That was what his brain said. But what his hand did was plunge through the screen, through the wire, boys and girls. He broke the wire and went straight through the screen door. He pulled the wire away from he pulled the wire away from the frame and reached through. The screen scraped the back of his hand and his arms, but he didn't stop. He fiddled with the lock inside until he heard a click. He silently slid the screen door back, stepped past the hanging blinds into the sports family's house. Even with the blinds blocking every window, the room he entered was airy and bright. Fresh from the freshly painted walls to the sparkling glass tables to the polished wood floor, everything looked new. Luke stared. Almost all the furniture in his own house had been around as long as he could remember, and whatever patterns and designs it originally carried had long ago been worn away. At his house, even the once orangish couch and the once greenish chairs were now all a matching sort of brownish gray. This room was different. It reminded him of a word he'd never heard, only read: pristine. Nobody had ever stepped on these white rugs with manure-covered boots. Nobody had ever sat on those pale blue couches with corn dust-covered jeans. Luke might have stood by the door forever in awe, but someone coughed in the other room. Then he heard a strange beep, 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 beep. He tiptoed forward. Better to discover than to be discovered. He went down a long hallway. The beeps have turned into a long, drawn-out beep coming from the room at the end. Holding his breath, Luke stopped outside the door to that room, gathered the nerve to peek in, his heart pounding. There was still time to escape, unseen, to go back to his house and the attic and normal, safe life. But he'd always wonder. Luke leaned forward slowly, moving a fraction of an inch at a time until he could just barely see around the door. Inside the room was a chair and a desk and a big apparatus that Luke vaguely recognized as a computer. And at the computer, typing away furiously, sat a girl. Luke blinked, thrown off. He thought probably it was a boy. Somehow, he'd never thought about the sports family's third child being a girl. She was mostly facing away from Luke, and she wore jeans and a gray sweatshirt, not much different from what the sports family brothers always wore. Her dark hair was almost as short as Luke's, but there was something about the curve of her cheek and the tilt of her head that made Luke certain that she was not like him. He blushed, then he gulped. The girl turned her head. Luke croaked. Before he had a chance to think of another word, the girl was across the room and had knocked him down. She had pinned him to the floor, his arms twisted behind his back, his face buried in the carpet. Luke struggled to turn his head to breathe. So, the girl hissed in his ear, you think you can sneak up on a poor, innocent, unsuspecting girl who's home all alone? Guess nobody told you about our alarm system. Remember that buzzing, that beeping? A call went out to our security guards the minute you stepped on our property. They'll be here any second. Luke panicked. So this was how he'd die. He'd had to explain. He'd had to escape. No, he said. They can't come. Oh, yeah, said the girl. Who are you to stop them? Luke raised his head as much as he could. He said the first words that came into his mind. Population police. And the girl let go. Tune in tomorrow to see what happens next with Luke. Bye, guys.